Morgan, you've been at like Qualaroo and Inman and Facebook and now at Shopify, so you've seen a lot of growth.
I
Tell
have.
me, what have you learned? What are like top five lessons learned that you tell everybody what one needs to know about growth?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've learned a lot of things not to do along the way. I definitely have gone through like the school of hard knocks to kind of, it's been hard won and painful learnings at points. But I think the main things that I've learned are one, really the goal of growth is to have the clearest picture of reality possible, right? Like, I think we like in our role in trying to like grow a business, you have to be as like intellectually honest and objective in kind of your view of the world as humanly possible, and more than any other division in the business, I think often. And that real clarity and understanding is something that people kind of take for granted or gloss over. And the best companies and the best teams, the level of understanding that they get to is like orders of magnitude better than the other companies. So that's one. The second thing is they really understand how their business grows. Like, I think if you go to any kind of team right now, go to a marketing team in any company you can think of and ask someone in that organization, or ask five people in that organization, how does this company grow? Like, how does your business grow? You will likely get five different answers. And that's a real problem because that means that people aren't focused on the right opportunities and the right places of leverage to actually affect like positive change and growth in the business. So that's kind of the second thing. The third thing is that because you have a poor understanding of the business, you're not able to identify the right levers within the business or the right things to do within the business because you have this fuzzy vision of like how the business works. And so you have a lot of wasted effort. And what's interesting is that the smaller companies, oftentimes your big constraint is resources. I don't have a person to do that. I don't have money to do that, whatever. At a bigger company like a Facebook, those are not the limitations. You have all the people, you have all the money, you have all the skills. Really, it then comes down to, do I have the right ideas? Have I identified the right thing? And so like really being and companies are often and teams are often very bad at that identifying step as well. And then I think the last thing that I've learned is uh, all of that is really dependent on your ability to think well, to have like strong structured thinking, um, working from first principles, having like strong logical reasoning for why you're doing what you're doing. I think at least early in my career, I was way too impulsive or um, believed in something that wasn't probably shouldn't have believed in it. You could get excited about social media as a new opportunity, or you can get excited about like a new advertising format or whatever, without really thinking back to first principles, like all those other things that I talked about. And then the last piece is just executing and what it means to execute well, which I think in marketing particularly, teams see shipping as the end state. I launched a new campaign. I shipped an email. I built a landing page. I launched a blog post, and like done, checked off the list. And I think one of the big things that I learned is shipping is a milestone, but it is not the end state. And I think the best teams really think about execution as a continuous, ongoing process. And that kind of ship it and forget it mentality is like puts you on the path to ruin. So those are like four or five of the big things that I've
Hmm.
learned.
So how do you check whether your thinking is correct? You have assumptions of what's going to work and like your
Yep.
understanding of reality. So what is your approach there?
Yeah. So I think the first thing is being super intellectually honest with yourself about what is an assumption and what you know for certain, right? And then to what level you know these things and what your confidence level is in something. And so I think a lot of times we can tell ourselves stories about what we think we know, and we kind of take that story and then we actually in our brain catalog it as fact. when often it's just an assumption and or just a story we tell ourselves, or as a generalization that's like not always true. And so, um, being really honest about this is an assumption and we have to test it, or this is a hypothesis and we're not sure if it's true, or we have data to support this, or we don't. Um, Being really kind of honest with each other about where we're at in that is really important. And then once you identify exactly where you're at, then it's like, how do we go build confidence in some of these assumptions where we can actually we can either like falsify these assumptions, we can invalidate them, or we can find the ones that are true. And like our definition of truth and understanding gets better and better over time because our understanding of it gets better and better over time.
So at Winter, I'm a small B2B startup. I'm
Yeah.
aware of what I can compete on and reasonably challenge the establishment. Some things I'm kind of like an innovator, and in some areas I'm just behind. Like can't rank for shit on SEO yet, and so on and so forth. So in my shoes, understanding your weaknesses and potential strengths, where would you start to grow?
Yeah. I think one of the great things about a product like Winter is, one of the pieces of strategy that you hear a lot thrown around is like niche down or niche down and really try to like win a niche. And I think like Winter is one of those products that would like really like plays well into that strategy, right? Like you don't need 100,000 people using Winter today. You really need, people that sit at the center of messaging and conversion and performance marketing, and so on, to like like use your product, kind of like hit that aha moment, and then evangelize for it among their teams and really start to get, there's a pretty small universe of people that do like that are the best in the world at performance marketing, say, and those are kind of the people you want to reach. So I think, you know in the and then to do that, essentially what I would do is try to identify how I get in front of those people, and get them to that aha moment, get them through the product, and turn them into advocates for what I'm doing. And sure, there's some foundational stuff you can do, like you can start to write some blog posts and like, start to build that like long slog up on the SEO side. But I really think what you're going to do is you're going to find like some subset of performance marketing and conversion rate optimization folks who are like, they'll use the product, they'll get the value out of it instantly, and they will start to evangelize it. And so then for me, it's like, how many people are there of those? How many people know about Winter? How many people have used it, gotten to the aha moment? And how many people, like, how do I help them like talk about it, like past that, and kind of get that flywheel going? So I kind of think of it as, you know, there's going to be a big word of mouth component to this for you.
Mhm.
And so the key parts of word of mouth are understanding, like, okay, how many people are exposed to it, how many people are then sharing it, and what can you do in that kind of loop, to accelerate it, right? Like, yeah. So those are some
Mhm.
of the things that I would
So
think
in
about.
terms of getting in front of those people,
Mm.
it's very noisy out there. A lot of never been more startups and all that stuff. So in terms of raising awareness profile, is your in a B2B SaaS setting, would you do more PPC, or would you go more like outbound ABM route? Do you have a
Yeah.
preference here?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think what I would do is, I think the fundamental thing with any marketer is, uh, you know, we're worried about our performance. We're worried about our jobs. We're worried about we're not going to hit some goal. We have management breathing down our neck, trying to validate or trying to like get us to justify our reason for being and that type of thing. And so I think what I would do is kind of think about the psychology of that person and say, like, what can I put in front of them that helps them understand where they stand? That kind of alleviates some of that pain. So, like, I would probably see if I could build like a landing page scoring mechanism, or some kind of like report card thing, or some
Yeah.
kind of like again, this kind of goes back to that, like how do I drive the participation rate and the word of mouth component of the product that I offer. And obviously you don't want to like burn a bunch of cash giving away custom panels to just everyone, but if there was a way to kind of create a lightweight version of this that kind of like gave them a little taste of like easing the pain that you can like solve for them, I
Mhm.
think you can start to get some of that, that spread. Like people would, anyone would kind of plug their URL in to see what kind of score their landing pages would get and that type of stuff. So those are the types of ideas that I would think about.
Right.
But I wouldn't go like, and I guess it depends on who your customer is, right? Like, are you trying to actually sell to like the one CR? Like we have like at Shopify, we've got a few CROs, right? With Chanel. Like, are we trying to sell to Chanel, or are
It's
you trying to
actually
sell
my
to
main
me?
buyer is a product marketer,
Okay, gotcha.
B2B SaaS product marketer.
Yeah. So then I wouldn't go ABM. I wouldn't go ton of PPC. Like I think you're basically want to go where those types of people look for solutions to their problems. Like I think people like Googling for like help me with product management are like way beyond. They're not your buyer because they're already lost. So I would try to start more with okay, where do they go find information today? What are the problems they're trying to solve, and then how can I build some tools to like help them do that are like adjacent or a subset of Winters that kind of like puts them
Mhm.
down the path to unlocking the full
So
aha moment.
part of my strategic narrative for winter is like you probably cannot compete on innovation. You don't have enough money,
Mhm.
but you can probably compete and win with better positioning, messaging, storytelling, all that stuff. Now, and the enemy, if you don't do this, there's a gravity that pulls you towards sameness. You as Shopify, you don't have to worry about it. You're a category leader. But if I'm a small Shopify clone, let's say,
Mhm.
with
Sure.
less features and not a platform, I need to differentiate. However, if I just say start your online store, it's like, well, I got Shopify, right? Like, why do I
Right.
need you? So there's this. So I've been thinking of building like a matrix, kind of like G2 has those grids,
Yep.
contenders and niche and market leaders. Basically, I'm going to score every B2B SaaS company against sameness. There's a
Mhm.
methodology.
Yep.
There's every company has
Yeah.
they can see maybe quarterly updates or whatever where they're
Yeah.
at with
Totally.
their messaging. Something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. It's great. Yeah. And if you could like plug that in, see how you stack up, and kind of, yeah, you either like for the people that are differentiated, it's great. They want to stay and keep that edge. And like
Hmm.
winter is a great way to do that. And if they're in the middle of it, they realize that that's probably a bad place to be. And so winter is a
Hmm.
great way to kind of break out of that. So yeah, I think like those types of ideas are the ones that are going to get
Hmm.
people involved. And then if you can actually, yeah, kind of like turn it into something lightweight that, kind of people are excited to share with their colleagues. Like if you do well, you're probably excited to share with your colleagues. If
Yeah,
you
yeah,
don't do
yeah.
well, you probably want to share with your closest colleagues and say, "Shit, we have to figure this thing out." So if there's a kind of way to like drive, because that's how it's going to spread, right? You're going to find like one product manager who's like, "We probably should look at this." And then they'll look
Yeah.
at it and they'll go, "Oh, we actually like more of us should be paying attention to this." And then you're going to kind of like spread to a local group of people in a company. And I think the hard part is going to be like, sure, you can get one person in the company and then five people in a company, but then like, how do you get like these other companies on board too? Which I think is you need these tools that will kind of spread through different channels.
Hmm. Any thoughts on doing, let's say, not public shaming is the wrong word, but basically in public criticizing and saying, of course, we can help if you use our tool. They can fix this. But I've dabbled in this, and people get defensive. When
Yeah.
you're calling out their weaknesses,
Yeah, I
shortcomings.
remember the landing page tear down project. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, I think I think people will get defensive for sure. I actually kind of wonder if there's a way. Um, to kind of like invert it and position it as like opportunities, right? Like as opposed to being like, oh, like this sucks. Uh, like if there was a way to say like, cool, like if you're a bank, every bank says the same thing in their headline.
Right.
And if you could be like, hey, there's actually like 3 different dimensions that you could differentiate on here with like the, you could swap out one word 3 different ways. And that would really try, and then be like, people would be, oh, that's cool. Like that's awesome and interesting.
Yeah,
So you
yeah, I
take,
love
yeah.
that. It's framing
It's
it in
kind
a
of like
positive.
invert it into, what opportunities exist, and it's doing
Yeah,
the same thing.
exactly.
It's just kind of like flipping the
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
kind of the outcome. Yeah.
And so, last question here. So, when you're prioritizing growth marketing activities,
Yeah.
and then there's brand stuff, long-term stuff, and then there's like money in the bank now, like I'm sending a cold email to this guy or whatever, like this. Do you have a how do you like to think about the balancing of the performance marketing versus brand marketing?
Yeah. I Marketing's like investing your money, right? That's effectively what you're doing. You're trying to take current cash and invest it into vehicles that are going to like deliver future value to you, right? And like some stuff you need to like keep the lights on, so some percentage of your cash goes towards bills. Some of it you put in like an index fund or a 401k because you want it to grow slow and steady over time, but you want a consistent return. And some of it you invest in like speculative stuff, like you go to Vegas and you gamble some of it. And I think like growth marketing investment is similar. It's a portfolio. You're basically trying to maximize for every dollar and person hour in your control, like what's the right distribution of that for the maximum outcome, right? It's like a kind of a return frontier. And so depending on the stage that you're at in the company's life cycle and the scale that you're at or the channel you're thinking of, you might have more money allocated towards the longer term. Or you might have more money allocated towards the speculative, can we break off this local maxima thing. So yeah, I use a portfolio approach. I think it depends really. And you probably want, it's just like, what should my stock portfolio look like when I'm 20 versus when I'm 50? Like it's like a different picture. And so that's basically how I think about it. I think one of the things I'm super excited for winter about specifically, though, is like the fastest, one of the most impactful, lowest cost, fastest thing you can test is copy, is positioning. Like people don't do it. Like, uh, you talk to anyone like, hey, how often have we thought about our positioning? How often have we tested it? How many, people talk like about high tempo testing. They talk about running all these A/B experiments, but like somehow no one changes the headlines. Like I was super guilty of it myself, like about a decade ago when I was working at Qualaroo. I spent all my time trying to build up a webinar program because we're a SaaS company, and of course, all SaaS companies have
The webinar,
webinars.
yeah.
And Qualaroo grew by the powered by link that sat on the free unit, said powered by Qualaroo. One day we're like, we should be testing that. We tested it, and that kind of set us off on this huge journey of growth. And so I think people underestimate the value of like figuring out language market fit, and I think they don't actually realize that they don't have it, and but they think they do. They have an assumption that they do, and that they have an assumption that it couldn't be better, and it's written by a brand person or a marketing person or whatever that they can't really tweak and play with. And I think it's really important that growth marketers really identify this as a huge point of leverage to learn really quickly about what matters, what doesn't, and try to find that language market fit. And so I think like tools like Winner are going to be, it's kind of a, hopefully for you, not too secret part of their toolbox, but it's going to be like a superpower that will unlock a lot more understanding there. So
I like it. All right, thank you very much.
yeah, thanks, Pat. Thanks for having me.